the other thing I was very impressed by is David worked with a young Kenyan biologist named David Dablin, and he was Rendili. So he was from northern Kenya.
Yeah.
And unbelievably devoted, incredibly knowledgeable, extremely ambitious. And it was so exciting to see this investment that Ian's making in these young Kenyan scientists.
Yeah.
And again, I think that there is a difference between religious leaders and scientists, and it doesn't necessarily have to be connected because it works on two different levels. But by the same token, to see these young monks get so interested in science, and to see this young scientist be so passionate about his animal, the elephant, these are two fields that have enormous opportunity to save our world.
Yeah, I agree with you. I still think there's a little in traditional medicine and traditional, those people. Another wonderful expression in Buddhism, we say, all the universe is one bright pearl. What need is there to understand it? So this is kind of a challenge to scientists. What is all this understanding, these details? Because to them it's not because it's so difficult or whatever, but they think, this is the wonder. Why do we need to understand how these little workings go? Now, I'm both. I have very strong scientific inclinations, but also strong religious ones. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean our own Christian religion, much less, but not just Buddhism either. I love traditional, holistic religions. So don't forget, that's another bond right there, is the holistic attitude.
Yep.
The traditional people have it almost always, and the Buddhists have it, and all Eastern religions have that one bright pearl, basis for their thinking, and that fits right into traditional thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
so there's a resistance there to breaking it all down, analyzing everything, but I think, on the other hand, there's an absolute definite place for that as well. I think you can't force them together.
No, I don't think. I think you have to respect each approach on its own terms. But the experience that I've had is that young monks are extremely interested in science. And the Dalai Lama is very interested in science. In fact, he's working with medical doctors to talk about the healing properties of meditation. He also has come out and said, if science can prove that there's no such thing as reincarnation, then we'll review this Buddhist belief. I think it's fascinating that he is so willing to listen to science. And these monks, throughout their exchange in the United States, they were here for 2 weeks, said over and over again, we understand science. We, as Buddhists, we embrace science. There was one man, the third highest Lama in Mongolia, who is unbelievably wonderful. He was talking about the fact that they used to take corpses, the Buddhist monks, and put corpses in cold water so that they would be able to see the bones and the ligaments and the veins. They'd make these corpses very cold so that they could study anatomy. So perhaps there is a wonderful way of saying the world is a pearl. We don't have to explore it too much or understand it as well as perhaps scientists ask us to. But these monks were very interested in discovery.
They understand it, but they understand it on another level entirely. Another sense of time and space and everything. Mm-hmm. It's a whole different way of looking at the world. Mm-hmm. And they look at it partly, part-time, from the absolute point of view. Everything is one. Mm-hmm. And we are more or less, scientists are more or less limited to the relative attitude, linear way of thinking. You can't put it together otherwise. And but I wanted to be a biologist too. Mm-hmm. If I had 40 more years, I'd go right back. I wanted to be a marine biologist.
Who says you don't?
My doctor.
Oh.
No, he doesn't know. I am going to have 40 more. But I got better things to do. But, so I don't think there's any conflict. I mean, I was talking to David, was talking today about Darwin to the local paper. And I said, well, I hope you gave those creationists a hard time, you're doing that, you know, these people who say the Darwin was nonsense and there's no such thing as evolution or the origin of species or anything like that. I don't see why they think science is against God. I don't happen to believe in God, but if I did believe in God, I'd say it's just science is one of the things He created.
Mm-hmm.
The origin of species theory is part of God's handiwork.
Mm-hmm.
The mystery, great, wonderful. Where's the conflict here at all? And in that sense, there's no conflict between the two things you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that also has really struck me about the region, we're doing a project in Mongolia, as I mentioned before. And the scientists came in, these young scientists, and they're great. There's one guy who's doing a project called the mega fishes of the world. So he's going around and looking at the largest freshwater fish in the world. So the taimen, of course, comes to top of the list, or among the largest fishes. He's also doing work on the Mekong catfish. And they were starting to, catch fish and tag them and looking at patterns. And there was one scientist that they were working with who spoke fluent Mongolian. And as they're studying the area and looking for the what times of the year they spawn, they heard, I think it was a song that one of the nomads was singing, saying, "The taimen spawns when the cuckoo sings." And there's a certain time when the cuckoos go through that region, and it's the same time that the taimen are spawning. Yeah. So I think there's real merit to understanding local culture and understanding, these wonderful observations that they have that in this case was coming through the song. Yeah. And here the scientists are looking and starting to, study what's going on, and the local people already knew. So I thought that was really interesting.
I think where I am, we have the shad as shad is a very delicious edible herring, beautiful shad roe, the eggs and everything is about. But we have this bush which is in the rose family, Rosaceae family, but it's called shad bush, and it's not because it looks like a shad. It's because it blooms when the shad are passing through on migration, and that's how it got that name.
Yeah. Well, you know, when you look at conservation, I think that you really do have to look at the indigenous knowledge, and you have to look at what the science is telling you. And the Tributary Fund is trying very much to invest in both of those. But I think your point about the idea that they don't necessarily have to link is really important.
Perfect harmony going side by side,
Yeah.
We say not two, not one. The absolute and the relative. They aren't separate, but they aren't different. We say the relative meets the absolute would be the traditional. The relative would be the scientific. They both flow back and forth. They say the relative meets the absolute like two arrow points that touch high in the air. Which is a wonderful idea. I mean, the delicacy of that. But they are together, but they're also separate. And you can't force them together. But they look beautiful going along together, side by side.
Yeah.